Welcome to The Culture. We rest at the pulse of the community, providing all things news, music, fashion, events, and everything that we talk about in between. It's a lifestyle. We are The Culture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gallen, for joining us today again on The Culture. You are a friend of the show, always providing insight, and we're just so grateful to have you on with us today.
Always a pleasure, Jessica, to speak with you, and I want to continue to encourage and thank you for being a voice of the people. We have a lot of platforms out here, but when we have an opportunity to have our voices heard and our voices and our perspectives represented, that's always a strong point and a strong position for each and every one of us. So I want to salute you for your continued efforts on this journey.
Well, thank you so much. It takes a team. It's not just me. But I know I hear what you're saying, and I am grateful to have the people, Basil, Roy, Chaz, assisting me to make sure that we're able to get the word out to the people. WLRN did a public records. Two of our minority schools, Point Siena and Melrose Elementary, came back with not really even touching over 60% attendance in a week. I remember there used to be a position called community involvement specialist. Is now the time for such a position to, I don't know, are they still around? Can they open back up? Do they need to get involved? And for those of you who are not aware of what we're talking about the fact that now with distant learning, students are required to log in to dateschools.net by 10 a.m. every morning, or they will be marked absent. And so according to these records, students aren't showing up to school now. So Dr. Gallen.
Yeah, absolutely. What we've always contended, and I'm very familiar with the report that was filed by WLRN. It was predicated on some initial data. It's not to debunk those particular findings. But what we have also found, what we've always found, have my assistant here trying to intercede and tell me what to say. What we've also always found is that in these particular cases, whether it's a hurricane and what we're experiencing right now, things are bad for most communities. Things are bad for most states. Things are bad for the nation. But when things are bad for certain sectors of society, things are even worse for other communities. And we're talking about underrepresented, underserved communities. With a hurricane, for example, hurricanes is an exacerbator for poverty. It's an exacerbator for low representation. It's an exacerbator for low literacy. So things get worse under these particular conditions. What we found under that particular situation, despite the efforts of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, those data points showed up historically as they have, falling behind the majority of our schools in the district. Let me talk about what we have done. Okay. What we have done, and I want to, even though I'm very, very critical at times, I'm very transparent at times, I have to be fair all the time. The Miami-Dade County Public Schools was very diligent, very intentional, and very strategic in terms of making provision for devices, in terms of making provisions for connectivity. So it's not just the device, it's the connectivity. So we launched that very intentionally, very strategically. And when I say intentionally and strategically, we did it based on data. We didn't do a wholesale distribution strategy. We looked at those areas that we knew on the front end, where there was going to be a dearth of resources, where there's going to be a plethora of disparity, and we targeted our strategy around those areas. What am I saying? We targeted the poorest, the most underserved, the most underrepresented communities in schools with respect to allocating technological devices, tablets, et cetera, and our partnerships with respect to connectivity. So we knew that going in. We targeted those schools where the lowest 25% of our students reside and where they attend. During that first iteration of this work, that data pointed us in the right direction, that yes, there are still pockets of underperformance, still pockets of underrepresentation. And what we have to do is recalibrate, refocus, and re-strategize and implement even further to do what we need to do. What have we done? To your point, community involvement specialists, absolutely. But those positions are usually assigned to Title I schools. These schools in question, Title I schools, based on poverty. What we've also deployed are our principals who have been working around the clock, making contact with parents, making contact with grandparents, and anyone that's standing in a parental role to engage them and make sure that their children are connected. We've actually gone as far as sending people out to homes to making sure that, we leave no children behind. So what we've had are some families and some children coming off of the grid. Just because we're in the midst of the, COVID-19 pandemic, we still have an obligation to leave no children, no families behind. So we've gone out there within the framework of safety and security for our employees, knocking on doors, dropping off letters, making phone calls to make sure that all of our students are engaged. That strategy, subsequent to those data points, has paid off. Because last week, we had no schools below 70% in all of Dade County. And this week, we had 91.3% as a district overall. And that is 2 percentage points than attendance was district-wide last year without the pandemic. So we are making some strides. I'm very transparent in terms of us having to understand that there are communities that are often left behind, but based on data, we're going to be intentional, we're going to be strategic, and we're going to be deliberate, and we're going to be vocal. We're going to be vocal about it. But what we also, I want to say as I close out that remark, we also understand that we can't do it alone. Everybody has to put their shoulder to the wheel of this work. Our parents who have reached out to me personally on social media, reaching out to me in the morning, by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they have a device. Reaching out to me in the evening, the next morning they have a device. So everybody has to put their shoulder to this wheel because we're in uncharted waters, but we're gonna have to swim, we're gonna have to learn, we're gonna have to improve together.
And Dr. Gallen, I want you to also to add to this, if there are parents who are watching this and they still do not have the Wi-Fi capability and or a device, your recommendation is for them to reach out to the school, correct?
Yes, the protocols are initially reach out to the school first, the school principal. If you cannot reach out to the school principal and you can't get in touch with them because of office hours or whatever the case may be, dial 305-995-HELP. Ask for help. We're here to provide help. We have our board members that are available, our superintendent's office is available. And if all else fails, hey, hit me up on social media. Get up in my inbox and we'll be responsive to you from Florida City to County Line Road. Yes, I represent District 1. Yes, I am the vice chair, but each and every one of my colleagues on the board, we're committed to all children throughout Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And in this particular time, you can't be circumscribed to our particular areas. We have to be responsive to families from Florida City to County Line Road, and that's what I'm committed to being.
Yes, thank you. So that's 305-995-HELP, and we'll get that on the screen and in the body of the communication that goes with this interview so that parents have that if they need the help. And that's just not just for computers and for Wi-Fi, that's across the board.
Anything. I've had parents that have reached out to me, quite frankly, working mothers, single mothers, having 5 children in the home, but they had to go to work during the initial rollout of our meal provision program. She couldn't send her children to the school to get the meals. She reached out to me on social media, made a phone call. Subsequent to that, those meals have been delivered to that parent's home for her children. So we do what we need to do, where we need to do it to make sure that our children get what they need and that our parents and our families get what they need as well.
Now, you just mentioned meals. I understand next week, the week of the 20th, April the 20th, I believe there's going to be a slight modification in distribution.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yes. What we've done, we've made some adjustments from one location to the next. During the initial rollout, it was most, if not all, schools. Then we started targeting certain schools in certain communities. For example, you may have a large high school that's a distribution site. What we've also did is looked at the data points. So where we have high pockets of need, we're making some adjustments relative to that. Where we have sites that have been open, but it has not been really maximized. So you may have a school that is serving 300 meals versus a school that's serving 30 meals. So we have to make some adjustments based on data, based on evidence-based data in terms of where the need is, so that we can provide the supply where there's a demand and where there's a need. So that's fluid, that's evolving, but we always make sure that we update the community as sites change based on our analysis from one week to the next in terms of where there's the greatest need. We make sure that we provide the most resources.
Dr. Gallins, I read something that said that distribution for next week for the entire week of school would be distributed only on Tuesday and Thursday, but it would be a week's worth of food. Do you know anything about that? And if not, can we find out whether or not that is true or not?
Yeah, I need to get some more information as it relates to how they're going to implement that. One thing I don't do is speak on the details, but I know there was some contemplation about scaling it back as it relates to not having it every day, but making provisions for an entire week through grab and go. So I think that's aligned with that strategy, but we can definitely get some additional information. But if you have any questions, again, 305-995-HELP. If you don't get an answer there specifically, you can reach out to me or any of one of the administrators or board members, and we'll be more than willing to get you the direct answer to that particular question.
Okay. Also this week, news was circulating in regards to schools being closed for physical school, distant learning to continue through, I believe it was June the 3rd, and the superintendent sent out a tweet in regards to the calculated amount of days that are left for schools. But do you have any insight on whether or not it looks like we would be going back to school, or if distant learning would continue?
Yeah, unlike, and I say this with all due respect, unlike one's interpretation of the superintendent's tweet, where he gave his opinion relative to speculating on the likelihood, it wouldn't be prudent for me to make a declaration when the board has not made a decision. So that tweet reflected his sentiments. It did not reflect board policy or a board's position. I want to repeat that. That tweet reflected his sentiments relative to his opinion about the prudent nature of starting school back with respect to calculating the number of days we had remaining. That tweet did not represent a position of the school board. It did not represent a position of the district, and it did not represent a position of the governor with respect to the governor giving us a window through April 30th. So the governor is not going to render a decision prior to May 1st. And we as a school board don't want to preempt the governor, who has the ultimate authority in the state of Florida to make those kinds of decisions, giving respect and courtesies to the local school board's authority. So right now, there has been no decision relative to the discontinuation of physically attending school. There's speculation, there's contemplation, there's analysis, but I don't anticipate a decision being made prior to the governor's timeline, which is through May 1st. And as a school board member, I don't think it'll be prudent for us to even remotely preempt the governor's decision, as he has the authority. Our opinions are our opinions. I had an opportunity to clarify that with my good friend, Representative McGee. I provided some clarification to him because he did receive some information that he thought it was a decision that had been made, but a decision has not been made by the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. A decision has not been made by the governor of the state of Florida. And the decision obviously has not been made by the Commissioner of Education. Those are the three entities. Those are the three bodies that would ultimately make that kind of a decision. And the decision has not been made, and the decision will not be made prior to May 1st, which is the governor's deadline.
Good.
That's the timeline.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on after the window of opinion was released to the public, and understanding what that meant got a little blurry. So thank you for the clarity. Absolutely. Now, so you had another thought on it?
No.
Okay. Graduation. Now, the last time we spoke, we didn't really we weren't able to really speak to our seniors and their parents in regards to where we are, what we're looking like for those seniors. Can you speak to their grades, attendance, those measures that have to be met in order to be a graduating senior?
Absolutely. I was very, very adamant about this. I was very candid about this. Seniors, as with all of our students, still have an obligation to fully participate to the extent possible and within the framework available in the educational experience. That means school. School is not physically open, but school is happening through distance learning. So a senior still has an obligation to meet the requirement of a grade point average, 2.5 grade point average. Senior still has an obligation to meet the requirements for credits to graduate from high school. A senior still has an obligation within reason to meet the requirements for community service. What has been suspended are the standardized assessments relative to the FSA and the EOCs being suspended. So seniors obviously can't be penalized with respect to that. So the graduation requirements are still in place. Seniors should still be fully engaged in their commitments and their obligations for learning, i.e. their schoolwork, their classwork, whether it's distance learning, whether it's packets that are being disseminated, whether it's other activities that they're being assigned through their individual teachers for their respective courses, through their respective schools, they still have that obligation. So there's no free lunch subsequent to March 16th and no free pass for graduation. Certain things must continue to occur in terms of student engagement and student learning. And I've been very vocal about that because I have gotten wind that some seniors in particular have thought that after March 16th, all bets are off with respect to their obligations to do what they need to do, and they're still obligated to do it, and we expect them to do that as well. The only thing that's been suspended, Jessica, are required state assessments. That's it.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I would like to also speak to you a little bit about forecasting where we're going post-COVID-19. The summer has come. We are in the summertime. What do you think would possibly be addressed from a school board standpoint as to how we are going to move forward with learning, classrooms, and just the nature of the way that we teach our students? Now that parents have had a crash course in homeschooling, do you think that there's any type of possibility where there would be a homeschooling function in the way that it is now? I know that homeschooling has always been an option. However, it is not where you have a Miami-Dade County public school teacher that is responsible for the curriculum and having that one-on-one opportunity to engage your child on a day-to-day basis through Zoom or through some type of conference call. Is that something that you all may look into exploring?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. I was on a webinar this morning with the Florida School Boards Association and the Department of Education in the state of Florida. So we did get some information that came out of the commissioner's office with respect to some of these particular issues for local school boards. And one of those issues did come up. It's almost as if you were on the webinar. Starting with the summer, there is something that we've always known in education that's called the summer slide. We're not talking about the electric slide. We're talking about the summer academic slide, where students realize some level of academic decline or academic regression because they're not engaged. There's something about continuous stimulation to learning, continuous engagement in learning that continues to help students move forward. In the summer, if students, especially students in underserved communities, students who are in poverty, students who are in low literacy environments, their academics take a decline because they're stagnant. So the summer slide is something that we've always known about. That summer slide is going to be exacerbated post-COVID-19 school closures. And we understand that, post-COVID-19. So whether we go back in August, September, the summer slide is going to be exacerbated even more. So there are discussions, not only at the local level. There was a discussion and there was a declaration that it is the hope of the Department of Education that local school boards don't say, okay, it's June 3rd, June 5th, June 10th. by June 30th, turn in all devices. We need all devices turned in. Understanding that we want to, because we've had this gap in real learning and real academic and real engagement based on what we're used to, that we want to kind of continue an opportunity for students and parents and families to continue learning throughout the summer. That's number one. Number two, there were lessons learned. In the midst of crisis, there are lessons. So what we've learned is what we're capable of doing. You never thought you would be a teacher in your living room to your children. We never thought that we could deliver instruction and learning in a very different way. You're absolutely correct. Home learning has always been in place, but it was something that was for a select few based on a particular interest or a particular need. The nation, the state, our community, the Miami-Dade County Public Schools were compelled to go into this particular posture in terms of educating our children. So what can be born out of crisis is opportunity. This may be a new opportunity for us to look at new ways to deliver education to our children through technology, through home learning models that are varied, through not necessarily a monolithic approach that it's either home learning, either it's in school, but it could be a blended model. So right now there were those discussions on that call that there are lessons to be learned, and we hope people are really taking note of our resiliency, of our innovation, of our commitment, and of our dedication, and of the opportunity that's before each and every one of us. And when I say our, I'm not talking about Miami-Dade County Public Schools only. I'm not talking about teachers only. I'm not talking about parents only. I'm not talking about students only. I'm not talking about community stakeholders only. I'm talking about all of us. What have we created out of this particular crisis? What triumph can we realize out of this tragic situation that we face? And to your point, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And that is something that personally and professionally and from a policy standpoint, I'm going to be paying very close attention to those opportunities that we have moving forward.
Yeah, I think that it will be a huge miss if we did not evaluate the silver lining, because there were a number of things that have been birthed through this pandemic that I would love for us to continue moving forward, and not just have it be something that we look at as if it was bad, because there are some wonderful things that have come. There are many communities that have been forged and forced to commune, and there's just a lovely collaborative effort that has been made that I don't want to see to move away, because there was so much wrapped up into technology in removing yourself from life, but now technology has been used to infuse creativity and bringing people closer, and I love it. I just love it.
And as a parent myself, as both of us share that experience, you know, the unspoken narrative is what has it done to strengthen families, to strengthen relationships between parents and their children, in terms of us being who we are, the first educators of our children. We are the primary educators of our children. So yes, there has been a tremendous silver lining. There's also a newfound respect for educators, which I hope is also born out of the value that they bring, not only to children, not only to parents, but the value that teachers and schools and educators bring to communities, to states, and to the entire nation. And I hope that's something that's not lost once we resume school in a business as usual model, that we need to value those who have been on the front lines, but up until now, there's not been the degree of appreciation that they should have and should have had for decades, if not centuries.
I believe the community will rally behind you in supporting our educational system, and also tipping our hat to those of you who are on the front line, who are unbought and unbossed, Dr. Gallen. Love that t-shirt. As always, thank you so much for joining us on The Culture. We look forward to continuing conversations like this moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Always a pleasure, and look forward to speaking with you in the very near future as things continue to develop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Culture is produced and owned by Hip Rock Star Media and cannot be reproduced or broadcast without written consent by Jessica Garrett Muck